Our next speaker this evening is Ilan Pappe. Professor Pappe is the foremost historian of the Nakba that we've heard about already this evening, and whose publications include the ethnic cleansing of Palestine. I'm delighted you can join us this evening, Ilan, and over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Esther. Thank you, Tony, for organizing this important webinar. And it's a great honor to be with Stephen, Susan, Rada, and Ronnie and Tony on this panel. I would like to address one aspect that I think is appropriate to discuss on that particular day in our calendar. And I discuss this both as a historian who deals with this issue, but also as someone born to a family who lost on both sides many of its members in the Holocaust, both in Germany and in Poland. And this has to do with the abuse of the Holocaust memory and the way that abuse is manipulated and exploited over the years to justify the Israeli policies of elimination against the Palestinians. I want to pay tribute to one or two Israeli critical scholars who were brave enough to dig out for the first time evidence and documentation and provided an analysis of how Israel manipulates the Holocaust memory in order to justify its criminal policies towards the Palestinians. I should say that this is really a project of inquiry that exposes two sides to this connection between the Holocaust and the Zionist colonization of Palestine. There's one bit to which I would not address. I would not address in any detail, but I just want to mention it, which is the very important link that was in the early 1930s between the Zionist movement and the Nazis, who shared all kinds of interests, and among them, the one interest that connects today anti-Semites around the world with Zionism, and that's the wish not to see the Jews anywhere in the world, but in one place. So you can be a very strong supporter of Israel and a very anti-Semitic racist person. The two are not mutually exclusive. But I think more important is the way Israel uses for domestic consumption, but also for external consumption, not the Holocaust, in order to justify actions against the Palestinians. In fact, it began already in 1948 during the Nakba, when you study the kind of indoctrination that was taking place among Zionist troops on the eve of attacking Palestinian villages or towns, attacks that quite often led to massacres, always led to expulsion and ethnic cleansing. Always the commanders stressed in front of these Zionist troops that they're actually not fighting Palestinians or villagers or town dwellers, women, men, and children, but they're actually fighting the new Nazis. And that was a very important part of the indoctrination, the Nazification of the Palestinian, which is another form of advocating dehumanization of the Palestinian, so that you could then enact policies of expulsion and extermination of the Palestinians. This continued throughout the years. One good example is that in the Encyclopedia of the Holocaust in Israel, which is a book that exists in every household, the second and largest entry in this encyclopedia after Hitler is Haj Amin al-Husseini. Now, Haj Amin al-Husseini had, like so many politicians in the Arab world, seeking alliances against Britain with whoever opposed Britain. But to put him in the same role as Hitler is reminiscent of the horrible lie that Benjamin Netanyahu brought with him in one of his visits to Britain, when he claimed that Haj Amin al-Husseini is the one who suggested to Hitler to exterminate the Jews. He saw Hitler for 1 minute and a half. They didn't have much time to talk about anything. And it was something that is part of that manipulation in order to create this false, totally false connection between the Nazi regime and its extermination policies and the anti-colonialist resistance of the Palestinians to the Zionist colonization of Palestine. Now, that kind of Nazification continued afterwards. I think many of you would remember how Menachem Begin in 1982 compared Yasser Arafat in the bunker of Beirut to Hitler in the bunker of Berlin in the last days of the Second World War. And that again was in order to justify not only the search for Arafat, but to justify the brutal and ruthless 1982 bombardment of Beirut during the first Israeli invasion, comparing it to the British need to bombard cities in Germany in order to fight a horrible and unimaginable enemy. Now, beyond the 1982 comparison, we are aware that this kind of discourse and manipulation continued in Israel in this century. You can find it in the Israeli textbook for children. You can find it in the website of the Israeli Foreign Ministry. You can find it in the speeches of Israeli diplomats. And what we have seen in the last 3 months, like everything else about what happened in the last 3 months, that everything we knew about what Israel is doing, either its policies on the ground, either the way it manipulates the Holocaust memory, the way it fabricates history, everything it has done until the 7th of October is now augmented, is now being done in even a higher level of intensity. And that is true also about the fabrication, the manipulation, and the lies. The way that Israeli leaders were trying to portray the Hamas as a Nazi organization, and the way that they were trying to portray what happened on the first half of the day on the 7th of October as a Holocaust of the Jews is an insult to the Holocaust memory. And a lot of Holocaust survivors in Israel felt quite uneasy about these comparisons, but they were silenced very, very shortly after they opened their mouths on Israeli radio when they tried to protest and to ask that this would not be at all contextualized with the Holocaust. The idea that whatever you think of what happened on the 7th of October, and I agree with Ronnie, we still don't know the full details of how everything happened and what happens. But whatever the worst case scenario that one has for the 7th of October, to compare the deaths of 1,000 or so people to the industrial genocide of 6 million Jews, is the worst kind of abuse of the Holocaust memory, and it is done by the Israeli Zionist leaders themselves. Similarly, and I was thinking about it when Stefan was talking about the yellow star, which also my parents had to wear, to appear in the United Nations with the Star of David on the chest of the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations. Either the man is an idiot, which is possible from all we know about him, or he's not an idiot, which is even worse, which means that he's really trying to manipulate a symbol of the worst kind of anti-Semitism to the action of a resistance movement against the brutal colonization and oppression of the Palestinian people. But this did not deter, this stupid act, or rather cynical act, did not deter the Israelis to continue. And the main point, and with this I would end, and I think this is so important on this particular day to mention it. All over the years, Israel is always using a pretext for the worst kind of actions against the Palestinians. Why does it use a pretext? Because it believes that the pretext provides a shield of immunity in the West. Namely, this is a democracy that defends itself. This is a democracy that retaliates. This is a democracy that is a Jewish democracy that fights against the new Nazis. I don't know if you heard, and I hope you don't do it too often, but if you would have listened to Netanyahu today, which I would never suggest, but sometimes you have to if you want to be on top of things. He today talked again about, in response to the ICJ ruling of the Palestinians as the new Nazis. So it's very fresh, this kind of manipulation. But the pretext here is very important. And it doesn't matter whether the pretext is to say we have to do what we do because we are facing the new Nazis, or we have to do what to do because we are facing a branch of the Islamic State, or an arm of the Iranian octopus. It doesn't matter. The pretext is important because Israel doesn't want to talk about the context. And we have seen what happened to those who talked about the context of the 7th of October, including the Secretary General of the United Nations, who dared to say that what happened on the 7th of October didn't happen in a vacuum. The context is so important because the context is that Israel is a settler colonial state, and like all settler colonial states, it's based on the elimination of the native. Here, the natives are the Palestinians. And this eliminatory policies that came to a certain peak in 1948 with the Nakba are being attempted again. And the pretext is far less important than the context. And the context is that Israel is using that the last 3 months to complete what it has not completed in 1948. And of course, all of this will not happen if, as Ronnie already said, if not were for the shameful position of the British government, the American administration, and European governments. And I must say, I know that a lot of people seem to be happy with the ICJ ruling. I'm not. I think the ICJ showed cowardness, a lack of moral stance, unlike the South African government when it did not call for a ceasefire. Not calling for a ceasefire and asking a state like Israel, or believing that the state of Israel will report back within 30 days that it is trying to tame the genocidal policies, is ridiculous. Israel, even if it does, which I doubt, hand over such a report, would use the 30 days and would work towards continuing the genocide with the knowledge that the ICJ has given it 30 days to continue its work. I don't think that was the intention of the ICJ, but that's my final point. What is so interesting, among even good people and basically positive institutions, they somehow think that what is important is the message that they convey to Israel and not how these messages are interpreted by Israel. Some people who showed solidarity with the victims of Israel on the 7th of October are not bad people. But they didn't understand that the message of solidarity was understood by Israel as a carte blanche to genocide the Palestinians in Gaza. In a similar way, what the Israelis understand from the ICJ ruling is that they got a slap on the hand, yes, but all in all, there is no pressure from the ICJ, as there's no pressure for anyone else, apart from the civil society in the global south, to stop the genocide in Gaza, which really means that it's up to us in the civil society in the world, of course, and up to the liberation movement on the ground to double and triple our efforts, because we cannot rely either on the governments or on international law, unfortunately, to stop the genocide of the Palestinians. The only good news is that the 7th of October exposed something we knew before, that there are such wide cracks in this construction of Zionism that we are definitely seeing the beginning of the end of this project. Zionism is towards its last phase. It's a very dangerous moment because it is very cruel and ruthless, because it's fighting for its life. But there is a light in the end of the tunnel. There is a dawn shining at the end of this dark night. It is going to collapse and implode both from within and eventually with the pressure from the outside. We just have to wait to make sure that the void it leaves behind is going to be filled with a constructive alternative to the Zionist state, and that we are not going to face a long period of chaos as happened in other places where regimes disintegrated but were not immediately replaced by something more hopeful for the people who live there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ilan, for that clear analysis, and also the exhortation that it's up to us